I recently saw that Terence Crawford, Bud Crawford, all right, so he left Arum, then he also sued him, and there was like some insinuation that there's like racial things about it. What's your take on this? Because you've known Bob Arum for quite a long time. Do you think he's a racist? Do you think he like hates black fighters or something? I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
The man who promoted Ali so many times, who promoted Sugar Ray Leonard so many times, and it was the main force behind Marvin Hagler. It's ridiculous. Last time I checked, those people were all black.
Okay, all right. So I mean, so you think that it's sort of like nonsense? It's like sort of like maybe to generate attention or something. Is that what we're talking about? Or
I just think it's sour grapes. I mean, he can't. Crawford's not the most interesting personality and not the best talker. I mean, Floyd Mayweather promotes interest in himself, no matter who the promoter is.
well, we've talked about the fact that first of all, Crawford's a phenomenal fighter, and I always say that regardless of the guy could be like bad human being, good human being, whatever. But as a fighter, you judge him on his merits. So we've always said that Crawford's a great fighter. Same thing with Mayweather. But yeah, it's like one thing that I remember, and when he was talking to Joe Rogan in 2000, I think it was 17, and Rogan asked him like, do you have time to promote yourself the way Mayweather does? And then Crawford said, no, he doesn't. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you have more time to focus on your fighting or whatever. But in terms of like the racial thing, I really didn't get it. So that's why I wanted to ask.
It's ridiculous. Guy's been promoting black fighters for 50 years.
Yeah, that's sort of what I thought. And so the other question I sort of wanted to ask you with regard to this, because I've been talking to fans, you work PR for Don King. How much responsibility does a fighter have to promote himself versus, the responsibility of the promoter to do his job and, hype the guy that signed a contract with him?
You referenced the signed contract. There's a bout contract, and the boxer agrees to use his best efforts to promote, and the promoter does the same thing. And there's also a promotional contract usually, which lays duties and obligations upon each. Don't forget, a contract is the document or documents plural that are agreed to promises between the parties. In other words, if X does this, Y will do that.
So here's a question, for example, like the promoter will do the press conference, right? They're gonna organize all that, right? The fighter is required to show up for this. They can miss it. I mean, is this contractually obligated in most cases or no?
It's under a broad heading of best efforts to promote.
I see.
We had one fight with Frankie Randall. I think it was the second fight against Chavez. We had 100 people on the dais and about 1,000 people at the press conference at the MGM Grand. And we couldn't find Frankie Randall. So Don King said we'll go ahead without him. So we did the press conference with Don King, Frankie Randall, and Chavez. Most of the people were there to see Chavez anyway. So afterwards, I ran into Frankie Randall, the late Frankie Randall, in the lobby of the hotel. I said, what happened? He said, what do you mean? He said, I'm going to work out. I said, you forgot part of your job today. You were supposed to do a press conference at 11:30. He said, oh shit, I forgot. He said, I said, where were you? He said, I was out doing my laundry.
No, and I mean, so then
talking about a $50 million promotion, and the fighter did his laundry instead of going to the press conference.
Well, I mean, yeah, it sounds a little bit like, let's say it definitely sounds like ridiculous, right? But Let me ask you this. Sometimes if a guy doesn't show up, right, like that, maybe that like spikes interest, like, I don't know. Or what do you think?
Not when you go in. Chavez brought half of Mexico to Las Vegas, so Chavez was always the man. Chavez could have been fighting Mickey Mouse, but in this case, Chavez could fight Mickey Mouse and draw a crowd. But the thing is, with Chavez and Randall had won the first match, so it was a kind of controversial rematch. For him not to show up for the press conference was absurd. He just forgot.
Yeah. I mean, no, like I said, it sounds ridiculous in one sense, but
yes, it was. I asked his manager where he was. Manager said no. You know who his manager was?
Go ahead.
Carl King, Don King's son.
I was. Yeah, I mean, this is always the question, but this was, and the other thing is, this is before social media, right? This is all before social media. Nowadays, everybody has the Facebook and the Instagram and all this stuff, and
you don't need to go to the press conference today.
Yeah.
Press conference comes to you.
So one question, another question related to this would be like, Oscar De La Hoya, Mayweather, they all left, they worked with Arum, right? They left. Did they realize that they could do all of this stuff themselves? They don't need the promoter. I mean, what's the idea there?
When they say it's not about the money, it's always about the money.
Well, of course.
Satisfied fighter doesn't leave.
But, if you're a promotional contract, you're always going to make less than if you potentially could, if you could do it yourself, right? I mean, because you're always giving somebody the money, right?
But sharing the money.
Right. So you're always going to make potentially more on your own. Could you do the work on your own is the question, The
answer is no. I mean, Crawford told you he didn't have time to do this promotional work. The truth is he wouldn't know how to promote a flea circus.
Right. I mean, like Mayweather and Oscar, maybe they're exceptions, right? Like most fighters, I'm not even talking about Crawford right now. Most fighters would not be able to, right? Like, or they wouldn't be able to do it at that level. Another question I had as relates to this, I saw an interview with I think is Eddie Hearn, and they were asking him if he was going to sign Crawford. I don't know if you saw that interview.
I didn't see it.
I think what he mentioned, I think it was Eddie Hearn. He said he'd love to because, okay, who wouldn't sign Crawford? But he said that he doesn't think that he can get him the big fights because they're all with PBC, all the guys at his weight. So is it like a thing where a promoter has sort of a monopoly on a weight class? And so, that's the reason why maybe Arum couldn't get him to fight, because as much as he tried, he doesn't have access to those guys.
Sometimes promoters dominate whole divisions. Don King had a stranglehold on the heavyweight division for 15 years?
Right, exactly. And so
if you were another heavyweight and you wanted to fight for the title, you either better join Don King or have your promoter or your manager or somebody make a connection with Don King.
Yeah. So is that a question of like, what was Arum going to do?
If somebody came along who would be a great opponent for Mayweather, somebody would bring a lot of interest. I dare say the guy would probably hook up with the people who were with Mayweather.
Yeah, because how else are you going to, right? So how else are you going to do it? So then maybe it's a question of like, there really wasn't anything Arum could do. I don't know.
Arum did a terrific job of promoting Crawford. Terrific.
It's always easy, like in hindsight, to say, well, you could have done this better. And I mean, like, I know who it is. I thought he was a top pound for pound fighter, right? And I'm not like I'm not as diehard as I used to be, but so, I'm not a casual fan. So I guess, I don't know. So that's sort of where I'm coming from.
He had him fighting in Omaha, Nebraska. Why? Because Omaha is such a boxing hotbed, or Crawford hotbed? No, it's Crawford's hometown, and they could sell out a 10,000 seat arena. That's why. Otherwise, those fights would have all gone to Las Vegas.
I mean, it makes sense, Somebody asked the other day why Mayweather didn't fight outside the United States. I mean, seems like he could sell out Vegas, right? He could sell out he can get big fights, big money here. Why would he go somewhere else, right?
Crawford, on the other hand, can't sell out a phone booth.
Right? Like maybe, a decision that Crawford would need to make. And I mean, again, I don't make those decisions for him. What if he would have moved to Vegas 7 years ago and just started fighting out of Vegas?
It's not so much living or fighting in Vegas. It's having somebody do the promotional work. Somebody has to do the seed work.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to lay the seeds. He would have to spend a lot of time in Vegas. I can think of very few fighters who actually, other than Tyson and a few others, who moved to Las Vegas, and they did fun.
I mean, I that was my only thinking, that if you're living there, it's easier for you to go to these places, to constantly be there and organize what you need to organize.
Today with the internet, you don't need that.
That could be true. All right. I mean, I don't know.
I have to say, as Judge Michael Marley presiding, Bob Arum is not guilty of being a racist. Bob Arum is not guilty of mishandling anything with Crawford. He did a terrific job.
Well, what I told somebody, my thought was that I thought Bob Arum is an equal opportunity hater. So if you cross him the wrong way, he's not going to like you either way, regardless of what your skin color is.
You're asking Bob for money. That offends him right away. But he's like all promoters that way. Bob loves green, like in cash.
So. All right, that's it. So,
the old saying, when they say it's not about the money, it's always about.
It's always about the money.